Academy FM Folkestone
on 105.9 FM
and online at academyfmfolkstone.com.
Hi, my name is Eloise and I'm interested in finding out more about dementia. So I spoke to Trish Vella-Burrows, who is the Assistant Director of the Sydney Dehan Research Centre for Music, Arts and Health. To find out more, I started off by asking her, how likely is it that I will get dementia?
Yep, that's a very interesting question, I think. And it really depends on how long you live. So if you live up to the age of 45 to 64 and you have 100,000 friends, 4 of you are likely to get dementia. If you live up to the ages of 65 to 70 and you have 200 friends, then 1 of you is likely to get dementia. If you live up to the age of 75 to 79 and you have 100 friends, 2 of you are likely to get dementia. If you live to 80 to 84, 3 out of 100 are likely to get dementia. If you live to the grand old age of 85 to 90, then 8 of you are likely to get dementia out of 100. So it rather depends on how long you live.
What is it like to have dementia?
Oh, I think the experience is different for everybody who has dementia, and there are some things that are similar, but I notice that you've put a couple of ideas. People maybe have said to you that some people think it's like having concrete in your head or rice pudding in your head, and I think that's a pretty good analogy, really. Some of the things that have been said to me are there's a muddle in my head. Somebody said there's a muddle in my head. Somebody else said it sometimes seems to work out okay, everything's okay, and then wham, there's a big hole in my thoughts and I can't concentrate. And other people talk about living in a world where everybody speaks a different language and they don't understand what the people are saying and they don't know how they want them to respond. So I think those sorts of rather frightening experiences of just being a bit lost and not understanding what's happening in the world. Rosie Boycott, whose father had dementia, she contributed to a document that was written by the Department of Health recently, and her father said that it was like standing still in a very busy airport with the busyness speeding up around him all of the time, him standing still and people making sense of the busyness and him not being able to make any sense of it at all. So that was his idea of what it felt like.
Is it just short-term memory loss that can affect people, or can long-term memory loss affect them too?
Yeah, that's another very interesting, good question. To start with, short-term memory loss is probably one of the first symptoms, and it's more than just ordinary age-related memory. You know, as we get a bit older, we might more often lose our keys or can't remember what we're doing in a room, having just got there and things like that. But it's much more than that. People have problems with memory to such an extent that they forget a sort of sequencing of a job. For example, if they were making mashed potatoes, they'd forget what they've done just before. So they would know maybe they'd peeled the potatoes and then they would not remember that and not be able to sequence the next part of the process. So really forgetting things to such an extent that it interferes with your daily living, those sorts of things. So then this sequencing problem becomes more and more of an issue with people, and they have problems with something called executive functioning, which is to do with rational thinking. So if you were, for example, to think, oh, you know, what shall I wear today? Actually, this top goes quite nicely with that, but then I might be a bit cold, so I'll put that over the top, and I need boots because it's raining. Those sorts of rational thoughts will be quite difficult for people with dementia in the middle to later stages. So planning, rational thinking, making decisions and understanding the world becomes very difficult.
Is it inherited? Can it get passed down from parent to child?
Yes, it can. Some of the dementias can get passed down from parent to child, or there's potential for that to happen. And there are different types of dementias, and something called early onset dementia, where people get dementia before the age of sort of 55, and that's associated with genetic triggers. So you probably know that our DNA, which is attached to chromosomes, and there are 23 pairs of chromosomes that make up who you are, and you have half from your mum and half from your dad. And on the chromosomes number 21, 19 and 21, if people can have a sort of mutation on those chromosomes, and it shows that they are likely to get dementia, and it's often because their parents have passed that down to them. But interestingly, it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that they get dementia. So there are other outside triggers that either prevent dementia or mean that people are going to get it.
How long does it take until you can't remember anything?
That varies with different people. I think that the sort of average span is about 7 years. So from people having a diagnosis of dementia, and I think what's really interesting to notice, important to acknowledge, is that people probably have dementia changes for many, many years, maybe 10, 15, 20, even 30 years. They have a very slow dementia type changes. And so when they're diagnosed, they go to the GP because they can't manage their lives very well. They probably have had some form of very early dementia before that. So, but really, if we're thinking about, they go to the GP and the GP does some tests and says, yes, you do have a type of dementia, then 7 years is probably the average that people function, and the functionality is getting less and less over that time.
Do you die from dementia, or could you die from something else?
That's a question that's often asked, actually, because it is a terminal disease. That means people don't get better from it. But there are lots of factors that influence the reason people die. And with dementia, it's associated with the other conditions that are connected to dementia. People have dementia who have heart conditions, who have high blood pressure, who have diabetes, for example. So those conditions can sort of preempt dementia. So it means that they have other conditions as well. That's called comorbidity. It's having more than one condition at a time. And so people could die from those conditions. They could die from a heart attack or a stroke. They can have dementia, but they will die from something else. The other important factor is that people with dementia, it's very difficult sometimes to assess what's happening with them health-wise. So they may have an infection, they may have pain somewhere in their stomachs, and they're not able to articulate that. So it's very difficult for nurses and doctors and family members to really assess what's happening. So they could actually become very unwell and even die of those conditions because it's very difficult to assess. So the answer to your question is you can die with dementia. It is a terminal disease. You don't get better from it. But all these other conditions in the mix mean that people die of various things who have dementia.
Can I stop myself from getting dementia?
Well, yes. It all sounds rather gloomy, doesn't it, having dementia? But I've worked with people with dementia for over 40 years. And there are lots of very positive things, particularly now because the government, there's a big push that's driven by the government to improve the quality of life with people who have dementia. So one of the things is how we live with dementia, and we can live very well with dementia. My mum has dementia, and we have a lot of fun. We go out together. We do the things that she likes to do. We laugh a lot. We play games. We dance. We sing. And it's a very positive relationship that we have. And part of it is my development, my sort of personal growth, knowing somebody close to me who has dementia, and it's a very positive thing for me, even though we know that she has a terminal condition. But in terms of stopping yourself getting dementia, there are risk factors that you can do something about. The few that are very important are eating well. So not eating high fatty foods or salty foods, so that you keep your blood pressure down. You don't get something called arterial sclerosis or atheroma, which reduces the blood flow in the veins. You can not smoke. Smoking can lead to changes in the body that can that can lead to dementia. You can keep your brain active, actually, a brain gym, as we call it. So if you like doing sort of puzzles, very good. There's a lot of sort of handheld devices now that mean that you're working your brain a lot of the time, working out puzzles or looking at sort of strategies for managing games and people in the games. And they're very good for our brain. So if we carry on doing that. And physical exercise as well is thought to be very good in reducing the risk of dementia. So really, having fun, eating healthily, doing lots of physical exercise, meeting friends, having a social life, keeping your brain active, all those sorts of things can help prevent dementia, and they can certainly help with quality of life and well-being when people do have dementia.
105.9 Academy FM.
The sound of Folkestone.